What led to the creation of games and gaming? When the human species became nomadic, when survival stopped being a constant worry and moments of rest, of downtime appeared, people filled the silence with imagination. Looking around, they found what would become the first gaming pieces in history. Stones became armies and soldiers, lines in the sand became territories, their domain, a place where a lowly peasant could become king. Games emerged from the earliest forms of fantasy fulfillment. Rivaling tribes, simulated hunts, warring territories where one could fight without dying. As civilization grew, so did games. Boards replaced dirt, carved pieces replaced stones, chess gave us war without blood, playing cards gave us probability, deception, and luck. For thousands of years, games remained abstract, symbols pointing at ideas, not embodying them. Then in the 20th century, a shift. What was before exclusive to kings and the most affluent members of society became available to the common man, to families and their friends. Monopoly became ubiquitous in homes. Decades brought with them Scrabble, Clue, Game of Life, Yahtzee, Trivial Pursuit, Catan, and then they had their digital rivals in the 70s, Pong and Space Invaders, Pac-Man and Super Mario, The Legend of Zelda, and handheld breakthroughs like Tetris. Games and gaming were growing and spreading. In that time, in 1974, in the midst of all this, Dungeons & Dragons changed everything. Games stopped being only about rules, points, and high scores, and started becoming about worlds. For the first time, a game wasn't just a contest, it was a shared story. You didn't control the characters, you were the character. Your choices mattered beyond winning or losing. D&D proved something revolutionary, imagination as a core mechanic. But it came with a cost. D&D asked a lot of its players. You needed campaign booklets, charts, character sheets, dice. You needed a dungeon master, someone willing to shoulder the burden of storytelling, world building, pacing, and fairness, balancing the narrative. The game didn't show you the dragon, someone had to describe it. For many, that was fantastic. It was magical. For others, it was a barrier of entry. D&D was limitless, and still is, but intimidating. A titanic yet fragile force. If imagination faltered even for a second, the world collapsed. And that left a gap, a space for a game that could carry some of that imaginative weight for you. Then, in 1993, a spell to counter the current fantasy space. Richard Garfield introduced Magic: The Gathering. At first glance, for some, it was just another card game. It translated imagination into a physical system, sure, but instead of asking the players to imagine everything, Magic showed them. The dragon had art. The fireball had rules. The only thing a player needed to worry about was casting a creature spell, not set its power or toughness. They just had to cast a sorcery or an instant, not roll to determine their efficacy. Every card carried three things: mechanics, imagery, and flavor. Suddenly, fantasy wasn't fragile. It was repeatable. That changed gaming forever. Before Magic, decks of cards were static. Most deck of cards would be basically the same, except for a couple of key differences in design, style, and what they had on the card. But they were the same. Magic shattered that into a million spells, figuratively and literally. Your deck wasn't just how you played the game, it was the game. You didn't sit down with a character sheet, you arrived with the spellbook or a library, and that you had personally assembled. Every land, every creature, every spell reflected your decisions, your preferences, and your philosophy. Aggression, control, chaos, among other play styles. Two players could use the same color, the same Ravnica guild, the same shard, or the same clan, and they could still play entirely different cards, even mirror matches. You could have started with the same exact hand and different decisions would ensue, determining the outcome of the game. Unlike D&D, characters or Monopoly playthroughs, decks didn't exist only on the table. They evolved between games. Trading wasn't just commerce for you to get the pieces that you needed. It was world building. Knowledge mattered. Discovery mattered. Community mattered. Magic turned downtime into design time. Magic didn't just depict fantasy, it encoded it. Lands were mana generators, sure, but they were also territory, growth, potential of power. Mana Screw and Mana Flood are constant worries for players. Creatures didn't just appear, they were summoned. They got sick, they attacked, they tapped, they died. Even failure was a narrative. A player lost because their world collapsed. That was the genius, that was and is still the genius of Magic the Gathering. The rules handled the burden of detail. You got to use those tools to tell your story. You didn't need a narrator, you didn't need perfect imagination, hardly any sometimes. The system carried the fantasy. Then the matches ended. The game store closed and you went home. 99% of games end when you put the pieces away or when you turn the system off, but not Magic. The game continues afterwards, building and tweaking and crafting and trading and playtesting and even trying out opening hands again and again to see if you will be mana screwed or mana flooded. If that one creature you need to win the game or to help you set up your board is going to appear in your hand. Magic was one of the first games where preparation was as engaging as playing it. Crucially, no technology was required. In an era where video games and their accessibility was becoming universal, Magic was able to break people away from the screen and engage them in a personal 1v1. And its potential of expansion, newer cards and sets, fresh rules and forms of interactions, it became basically endless. As technology advanced, games became louder, faster, and more automated, but something was lost. Video games performed imagination for you. Magic invites it. People didn't care about graphic cards or processors, only the graphics on the cards and the process of beating your opponent. Looking around modern gaming, you'll see Magic's fingerprints virtually everywhere. Deck builders and metagames, rotations, balance updates, collectability, player expression through builds. Magic proved that games could be persistent, social, imaginative. In a world chasing ever bigger screens, frame rate, graphics, nice shiny polished look, Magic reminds us of something simple and beautiful. Sometimes all you need in a world is to bring it to life with a table, a deck of cards, and the willingness to believe.